Hey guys, and welcome back to another Warframe video, where today we are going to be talking about the secondary weapons that we use in our Eidolon hunts. And we're going to be running through the two main ones, at least, that the current hunters are using, which is the Knell Prime and the Vermisplicer. Now, there are a few others, obviously, that are very, very good at hunting Eidolons, but we're going to go through these two today, and what makes using the right secondary weapons so important in a hunt, and you know why we've chosen these weapons basically to go with. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to run through both the builds for the Vermisplicer and then also the Knell Prime, and then we're going to just hop into the planes quickly and obviously explain again why we're going to be using these weapons, and then we'll do a few example runs and we'll round out the video after that. So first of all, let's take a look at our Vermisplicer here, aptly named Outo Shredder. Now this is all going to be built around crit chance, crit damage, multi-shot, fire rate, damage, everything like that. We're going to get the most out of it as we possibly can. Fire rate being probably the most important, and we'll explain that once we're in the planes in a second. But on this build here, I do have a river mod, 118.2% crit damage, 103.3% fire rate. You can put any stats on here really that are a mix of crit chance, crit damage, fire rate, damage, whatever. They'll probably work here. You just need something to boost up the fire rate and the crit damage in some way, shape or form. And then we've got Pax Charge on. That's going to just give us a battery recharge rather than an ammo pool, which is actually quite important for the Vermisplicer, as usually it does have a very, very small amount of ammo. We then also have secondary deadhead on, obviously, for precision headshots and also steady hands to keep us from recoiling too much, keeping our spread of tendrils in one place. So yeah, that's the build we're using for that. Now, it's worth noting as well that obviously you can see I've got gas on here. When I actually use my electric, my first ability on my Vault, which is Shock Trooper, that is going to combine with the primed heated charge here to create radiation and toxin rather than gas, so that's important to note. I should also note as well that I am running Arcane Velocity with both of these to increase their fire rate. Fire rate's very important, and again, we'll explain that in a second. But before we do that, let's just take a quick look at the Knell. So the Knell, very similar build here. Obviously, we can't put any Pax ribbons on. You could put one more ribbon mod on here to increase the accuracy, maybe. But for the moment, this is completely fine. Secondary deadhead for you know, more damage. And then I've got a crit ribbon here, plus crit chance, plus crit damage. Everything else geared towards exactly the same thing. So fire rate, multi-shot, crit damage, crit chance, and just raw damage. So yeah, what we'll do now, guys, let's just hop quickly into the planes, and we will run through why these weapons are important and why we use them. Alright guys, so I'm going to try and explain this as best I can, but essentially, you know, if you've been into Eidolon hunting for a while now, you may have noticed that any time that you spawn in the Gantulyst, he seems to come out of the lake at exactly the same time. It doesn't matter how clean your terrorist capture was, the Gantulyst still spawns at the same time. And that is because the shrine in the Plains of Eidolon, the one where we're going to put our brilliant shard after taking down the terrorist, is on a rotating timer. It's about 3 to 4 second intervals that this timer has, and if you miss one interval, you will then have to wait another 3 or 4 seconds before you are able to actually put your shard in the shrine. That means that the Gantulyst can only spawn at very specific times actually during our hunt, and you will notice that whenever you take out the first limb of Gantulyst and you check your time as to how fast you did it, that it will be very, very similar each time you do it. Now, if you are trying to be very fast and very efficient like I am, then you want to be getting perfect limbs and a perfect capture on Terrorist in order to get into the earliest possible shrine timer cycle as you can. And that is why we are running weapons with extremely high fire rate and extremely high damage, because we want to be taking out the limbs and the Terrorist itself in order to get the fastest possible time, thereby getting us into that really early interval on the shrine timer. Now, for those of you who have perhaps taken note of this time, in my experience at least, the kind of normal time, if you just have a pretty good Terrorist, you will hit the first limb of the Gantulyst at 2:43, and we'll do some demonstrations on this in a second. If you happen to get into the earlier slot, so the previous interval, you will see that your first limb of Gantulyst goes down at either 2:39 or 2:40 usually, depending on how quick you are to actually take that shot. If you're using macros, you can do it much, much faster. Now, this actually then carries over, obviously, to the Gantulyst. The Hydralist, you know, after you've captured the Gantulyst, has the same shrine timing cycle as the Gantulyst does. So, you know, the more cleanly you do your Gantulyst, the higher your chances that you're going to get into that previous shrine cycle for when you can, you know, actually put the shard in the shrine and spawn in the Hydralist. So it kind of does stack up over time, and you can get your times down well below 650 now for last Hydralist limb, and get out of the plains well before 8 minutes now, using these kind of methods that we're going to show today, and the secondary weapons that we have to hand with their stupidly high fire rate. Now, something else that this does come down to is your proper timing, because if your proper timing is off on this, then you are not going to be able to get the instant hits on the Terrorless limbs that you want. So that is something worth noting. But I think what we'll do is we will go ahead and kind of demonstrate these timings with both the Vermisplicer and the Knell, and we'll show kind of my normal average run where I hit the first Gantulyst limb at 243, and then we'll show a run where we get perfect limb kills and a perfect headshot capture, and we'll see what time we actually manage to hit the Gantulyst limb then. So without further ado, guys, let's just jump into it. Alright guys, so we're going to do 3 runs here. The first one, which is we're about to view, is going to be with the Vermisplicer. This isn't a perfect start, but it is one where we get our 243 times, so fairly standard. And we're going to go ahead and start with our normal fast charge. For those of you who do not know what is going on here, or you are unfamiliar with some of the more kind of in-depth Eidolon hunting tactics, I would recommend going and have a look at my other Eidolon guides. I will leave a link to those down in the description below. They will explain a lot of what is going on here. But basically, rather than using the kind of usual combo that I would do, which is where I fast swap after using Replac to my Zenith to one-shot the limbs, we are just going to be firing our Proper off and then swapping back to our frame with the Vermisplicer and shooting the limbs that way. Now, obviously, if you fire your Proper too early, you are not going to do any damage to the limbs. If you fire your Proper too far away, you are not going to do any damage to the limbs. So it is very important to get the timing and distance right when using tactics such as these. Now, this run actually starts pretty quickly. So what I'm going to do towards the end here is I'm actually going to do one of my normal kind of Replac swaps to the Zenith to take out the last limb, just to make sure that the time isn't too fast, because I did want to get some examples of just normal runs here. And this seemed like kind of the best way to do it. Also, the actual kill shot / cap shot here isn't perfect either. You can see that there is a definite kind of bit of extra time as to when the Eidolon actually goes down. So yeah, I'm going to not talk too much for the rest of this, and we can just have a look. And then I will pause the video with the kind of mission progress screen up once we take down the first limb of the Gantulyst, and we can have a look at the time. Alright, so as you saw there, that was a bit of a slow kill shot. You could actually watch the HP bar go down, which isn't usually a good thing. The likelihood is that some of my tendrils, it looked like, were going underneath the Eidolon and targeting some of the Vonvolists below it, which is not what we want. We want all of the tendrils to be on the Eidolon's head for the maximum damage. But let's take a look here and see what kind of time we get. All of these are going to be close left spawns, I might add. And as you can see there at the top, 3 minutes and 43. So let's move on to the next one. This is going to be the same run, but with the Knell this time. Once again, we are going to get a close left spawn on the Gantulyst. And yeah, there's a few things that you need to know about the Knell. Obviously, the first one is to proc the Death Knell buff, you need to get a headshot. Now, this doesn't always work, and the Eidolon's headshot kind of area, his, what is it? I don't know, hitbox? Yeah, hitbox, that's it. it's not that good, and you can see at the start here, when we go ahead and try and proc it, we don't actually get it. And fortunately for us, the Proper takes out the limb for us, so we don't have to worry about that. This generally is kind of a bit of a messy terrorist capture either way, but we get through it just fine. So yeah, once again guys, I'm going to kind of be quiet And we're going to go ahead and see it through to the first limb of Gantulyst, and we're going to pause again and take a look at the time, so see you in a bit. Alright, so here we go, setting up our pre-shields again, ready for the Gantulyst. Now, even though the cap shot was a bit faster there, the other limbs were not up to scratch, so the likelihood of us getting an earlier spawn here is very slim, but once again, it's going to be a close left. And once again, you can see there 2 minutes and 43 seconds. So exactly the same as the last one, even though stuff was, you know, slightly different. But let's move on to the fast run now. So for this run, we are back onto the Vermisplicer, and this is a run where we happen to get some very, very fast limb times. The cap shot is still not completely perfect, as you will see, but it is enough to tip us into that next kind of shrine cycle phase, as we were talking about before. So we're going to go ahead, do our fast charge. And yeah, we're going to do exactly the same thing as before, guys. Swap it backwards and forwards, so I am going to be quiet, you guys can watch, and then we'll come back in once we get to that first limb of Gantulyst. Alright, so you saw there the HP bar did go down quite a bit faster than before, but we were still able to see it, which kind of indicates that it wasn't a perfect kill. But we're going to go up and set up the pre-shields here. And as we'll see in a second, when we come to pause the video, we will land on 2 minutes 40 for the first limb here, and then we will regroup in the orbiter. And there we go, 2 minutes 40 seconds. So looks very much the same, but not really. So let's regroup. Alright guys, so hopefully if anything those clips showed that even with the most minute differences in limb times on Terrorist, you can end up saving yourself, you know, upwards of 3 seconds in the long run. If I had got an instant shield takedown on that Gantulyst and managed to do it in 1 replac shot rather than 2, that might have been a 239 start to the Gantulyst rather than a 240 like we saw there. But either way, that's 3 seconds faster than the previous 2 runs where really, you know, there wasn't a lot of difference in terms of limb takedown times and cap shot times, but if you get it just right, you can actually save yourself a decent amount of time. And as we said before, that does carry over onto the Gantulyst, sorry, the Hydralyst. Getting perfect limbs there as well, you will fit into that earlier shrine cycle and save yourself even more time. So yeah, let's just run through quickly kind of the pros and cons, which you probably picked up on there in the video of both of these weapons that we have been using. So the Knell Prime. It is a very, very high DPS weapon, and it can have, theoretically, infinite ammo if you proc the Death Knell buff. But as we saw, if you happen to hit the wrong part of the head, if you don't hit the hitbox correctly, you may not proc this, or it might bug out, and you will have to reload, and that is going to cost you a decent amount of time, a lot. You know, whenever that happens, it is a huge bummer in your run. So, you know, although the Knell Prime is very good, if you are using it and perhaps you don't have access to the Vermisplicer, I would recommend trying to get the, you know, the Replac Zenith switch shot nailed and then just use the Knell Prime for the final headshot to kill it. Because it is not worth, you know, all the effort trying to proc the headshot beforehand and then swapping over to the limb, and then if you don't happen to hit a headshot, everything's going to go wrong. It's just not worth the hassle. But the Knell Prime does have the higher DPS value over the Vermisplicer, and you actually need far less to kit this gun out than you do with the Vermisplicer. I've only got 5 former on here, but I did have a 2 or 3 former build before without even a Riven mod, and it is just fine. It does so much damage. So yeah, really, this is probably for the earlier players before you get your hands on a really good Vermisplicer build. And like I said, you can add to it by getting more accuracy here if you want to. Probably give you a better chance of proccing that Death Knell buff. But like I said, it can bug out, and it has been known to bug out. So something to bear in mind. As for the Vermisplicer, as we saw, you do not need to proc a headshot with this to fire it. It has a much faster rate of fire, and just generally speaking, quality of life-wise, it is much better in my opinion. You do not have to, you know, worry about reloading. You might have seen there as well in the Knell run where we landed and we had to reload the Knell before we could fire it. We got staggered when we landed. It was a whole thing. We managed to get it just in time. But with the Vermisplicer, if you've got Pax Charge, you don't have to worry about reloading at all, because whenever you take the gun out, you know it's going to be at full charge. And even though the fire rate is crazy high, you should have enough ammo in the magazine to keep it firing for, you know, at least 1 to 2 seconds, which is all you really need. So yeah, that's kind of all I'm going to say on the subject, guys. If you guys have any particular favorite weapons that you like to use, I know the Gaze is also a pretty decent secondary weapon right now to be using, and there's various others as well that are coming out and through, especially now with the new Incarnon adapter releases. So yeah, let me know what you guys like to use down in the comments below. If you have any questions about what you've seen during this video, then do let me know. Like I said, I will leave links to my other Eidolon guides down in the description below, so you guys can go and check those out if you were confused about anything else that you saw in this video. Otherwise, guys, if you did enjoy it, please leave a like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. I'll see you later, guys.